Welcome to another OU Insider Under the Visor YouTube Live. My name is Brandon Drumm. I'm here with Parker Thune. We have our man Spencer Forsythe on the board, manning everything and making sure all the tech is working, the cameras, the audio, all that type of stuff. But we are here to talk some Oklahoma Sooners football, some off-season stuff that's going on. We got to talk to Brent Venables last week. We got to talk to all 25 early enrollees and transfers that are already on campus. And obviously March 4th is a big junior day. So, and I guess can't not mention this part as well. OU Insider has hired Jesse Crittenden, who is formerly with the Norman Transcript as their editor and lead guy as far as all Oklahoma Sooner stuff went. He is now our beat writer for OU Insider, and we couldn't be more thrilled to have Mr. Jesse Crittenden on our staff. So Parker, how you doing, man?
Well, it's another Wednesday in Middle America. Just two dudes talking recruiting for an hour. So I will say, Brandon, we have not gotten the chance to do one of these since Brent Venables allowed us to talk to every single one of the scholarship newcomers at the University of Oklahoma last Thursday afternoon, both early enrollee freshmen and transfers, which was chaotic. Don't get me wrong. I've never had to float between 20 tables with different interview subjects all at the same time, but it was awesome. A lot of good content came out of it. Obviously, the one comment that made the rounds was when Peyton Bowen said, yeah, I'd be at Oregon if I hadn't forgotten to put AM or PM on my national letter of intent. So, and much was made of that, understandably so. But in the end, Peyton Bowen was coming to Oklahoma one way or another.
Yeah, I mean, I might be naive, I might be stupid, but I feel like, one, he's a really smart kid. You and I both know that, and we both had talked to him quite extensively leading up to, at least I had talked to him quite extensively leading up to National Signing Day. And granted, his parents kind of exiled Oklahoma from the equation. The decision was that he was going to go to Notre Dame up to that point, and he chose Oregon. And then turned in the NLI without the AM or PM or whatever it was on there. But then soon after decided he wanted to go to Oklahoma and that he was going to go where he wanted to go, as he said the whole time. So like you said, Parker, again, I may be naive to this, but I feel like one way or another, regardless of how that signature played out, it could end up being a Jaden Rashada deal where he got out of it and then decided, you know what, I'm going to go to Oklahoma. There are so many other ways that could have played out. One way or another, I think come August of 2023, you and I both agree that he would have been in Norman. One way or another. Like, it just felt like that the whole time. And he made it seem like that throughout the process. I know I talked to him off record a couple times, and I can say it now. Where he straight up said, like, dude, I'm going to try some things out. I am not going to Notre Dame. Like, looked me square in the eye. Said, I am not going to Notre Dame. I made a decision at that point. He goes, I love the staff. I love all that. He goes, but I've got to go where I feel comfortable, and I feel comfortable in Norman. And he said that over and over and over. And guess what? His visits proved that. Where was he every weekend? He was in Norman. Game or not, the dude was in Norman almost every other weekend. And I think that, to me, spoke volumes, where we always say follow the visits. And it just made sense. And, you kind of get where Notre Dame fans were kind of disenfranchised with the whole deal and jaded over the whole situation, and rightfully so, because he was supposedly committed to them. He showed up, I think, twice unofficially and once officially. And that was it. Those were his visits. And then between all that, I think he went to Oregon. He went to Texas A&M a few times. And then he went to Oklahoma, like literally lived in Norman. It's like he drove right up the road. He was going to a game, or he was going to hang out with friends, or he was doing something to that extent, or he was, he spent a lot of time in Oklahoma, and it was just to where he felt comfortable. And I think you got that sense from him, even in the interview, when you talked to him after he said all that. There were a couple of other, quotes afterwards where he was like, at the end of the day, I had to go where I felt that I wanted to be, and that was Oklahoma. And he goes, I'm really excited. He loves it. He enjoys being roommates with Jackson Arnold. Jackson told us that I guess they play PlayStation quite a bit together and battle it out and all that type of stuff. They're just really good roommates and really close friends. And they both insinuated that they made the right decision. And it feels like, two best friends going to school together was just kind of meant to be. And it sounds like Oklahoma's going to benefit from it. I even talked to another source this afternoon on the way to my son's training, and he was like, man, the Son McCullough and Peyton Bowen are just flat freaks. Like, they're just unbelievable, have first round talent, and are going to make Oklahoma's defense better. And that's stuff we continue to hear. I guess when speaking to players, though, Parker, what was something that was said to you, or you noticed, or somebody you talked to, or a player, or something that stuck out to you where you were like, outside of the Peyton Bowen stuff, that you were really, I guess, taken aback by and intrigued with some of the stuff that said player was saying?
Yeah, I think one of the sentiments that I heard echoed time and time and time again, going around talking to all these transfers and freshmen, is that, and I can't even tell you how many times I heard something strikingly similar to, I'm eating more than I've ever eaten in my life. And it seems the nutrition program at Oklahoma has certainly taken a step up under Venable's direction. And you know how I know that? It's because Austin Stogner mentioned it. Stogner, I can't remember who asked him, but one of the reporters asked Austin Stogner, hey, what's the biggest difference between the OU that you left behind and the OU that you returned to? And he said, the food. The food is so much better now than it used to be. Mm-hmm. So we've talked a lot, and probably not extensively since last spring or summer, about how Oklahoma is looking to invest a lot into their football program, both in terms of facilities and resources, to develop the student athlete, not just as a football player, but as a person. Think about the soul mission, all that. The point is, Venables and his staff are serious about squeezing the best football out of their players, anyway, anyhow. And these guys are packing on weight quickly, good weight. You already got some large mammals in that locker room. The Sooners brought in a couple of enormous transfer offensive linemen in Walter Rouse and Caleb Schaefer that both are probably going to start, I would say. No guarantees, but probably going to start. I talked to some of the true freshmen. Ashton Sanders has already put on 6 pounds since he got to campus. PJ Adabari has put on 12. Eric McCarty has put on 15. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, they're going to have these guys ready to go. Then you throw in a guy like Phil Picciotti, who doesn't need to pack on any more weight at 6'3", 237 pounds. The ones that aren't already tailor-made for Power 5 football, this Oklahoma staff, both on field and off field, is going to make sure that all the rest are tailor-made for Power 5 football by the time September rolls around.
Picciotti is Dolph Lundgren's love child, man. He looks just like a young Dolph Lundgren. I don't know if you know who Dolph Lundgren is. Do you know Dolph Lundgren?
I do not.
Oh, Parker. The comments are going to go off the charts. You've never seen Rocky? I think it's Rocky 4.
Nope. Never have. Listen, 80% of the movies that you reference, Brandon, or that anyone references, I have not seen. Let's just set that expectation right now.
Fair enough. Yeah, I thought, I thought Rouse looked a little slim, and then come to find out, he just got out of his sling. had shoulder surgery, I guess, prior to arriving. So there's that. And they think he's going to put on weight real quick when he gets back into everything. So I he's everything you would imagine he would be, as far as, just how smart he is. Like, in talking to him, and I grilled him pretty hard on the flip from Nebraska to Oklahoma. And he said, look, man, you can go NIL, you can do all that type of stuff, but at the end of the day, you got to be developed. And he goes, I felt so comfortable with Coach Beanbo, and looking what he's got and what Oklahoma has in the NFL. It's hard not to take a look at that in the playoffs and in the Pro Bowls, in the All Pros and all that type of stuff, and go, I probably should go there for the long run. And at the end of the day, that's how it all came down. Everybody wants to say Oklahoma threw all this money at him and all that. No, they really didn't. They basically said, look, we're going to develop you long term. Look at the NFL. Look at all the offensive linemen in the NFL. Arguably the top center, or one or two centers in the league, Creed Humphrey, Oklahoma. Two of the top, if not the best offensive tackles in the league, Oklahoma. And when you start gathering all that, and then you've got Orlando Brown, another guy that's really good at the tackle position, Cody Ford at the guard position. Like, these guys are really good players, and they've all come from Oklahoma in the last, 12, 15 years of, and even less time than that. And that stuck out to Rouse quite a bit. And so I think that kind of stood out to me a little bit, where he was, and he also said he wanted to get his degree from Stanford, and Oklahoma was going to work with him, and Stanford was going to work with him. So he was going to end up getting his degree one way or another, whether it's master's or regular, or how they were going to make all that happen by him going to Oklahoma and maybe having some of that transfer over. Like, everything was being worked out pretty well with both schools. And I thought that was also really interesting how that played out as far as it went academically. I guess another guy would be, oh my gosh. I mean, you talked about Stogner. Derek LeBlanc, I thought was really interesting to talk to. And hello, Ricardo LeBlanc. How's it going? I thought he was really interesting in the fact that, he's already up to 280 pounds. And he said he showed up about 263, 264. He's already put on about 16 pounds. And he says they told him, since he looks good and his frame's holding the weight right and really well, they said, keep going up. We want to see how much weight. If you can get close to 300, that would be great. So they're trying to push him up to the 290. And if he looks good with 290 and he's still moving similarly or almost as well as he is at 280, they're going to try to add 5 pounds or 10 more pounds to that and see how that goes. And if he's not moving as well, obviously they'll have him drop it back down and get him back down to some proper weight before the season starts and go from there. I thought that was really interesting, but it also shows, I think, just the necessity of bigger defensive linemen and how much Oklahoma is in need of those type of guys, that you're willing to do that to a guy just to see how he pans out at a certain weight after he arrives at Oklahoma just so quickly. So I thought there was a lot of things, and I think Venables kind of taking shot at, we just had dudes in the back end last year in the secondary, and now we've got athletes, that I'm paraphrasing, but that's essentially what he said in one of the comments. And he expects the defense to be way better. They're more athletic all the way around. He likes where things are on the exterior of the defensive line, linebackers in the secondary. But he really harped on the interior defensive line. Again, that goes to like what we were just talking about with LeBlanc, like the weight in those type of guys. Like, I think when we get to talk to, a Haltom, obviously a Gilliam, those type of, I think it'll be interesting to see how much weight they want them to weigh and how much they want them to put on too before the season, because, they were lighting the britches all across the board on the defensive line last year. I think excluding the defensive ends. So I don't know, Parker. I mean, do you find that interesting as I do, as far as like the weight that they're trying to add on just newly found freshmen that just show up? They're like, dude, you guys got to eat some cheeseburgers. We need some weight put on you.
Yeah, certainly. But I think to me, the greater narrative and the one that's more conveniently ignored just because there is always so much buzz about the true freshman. But man, I'm excited to see how many of these guys make big physical jumps in year 2 under Jerry Schmidt, off season 2 under Jerry Schmidt. We think about the transformation that Billy Bowman underwent his first offseason working out with Schmidt. How much better, how much more muscular, how much more toned, how much more endurance is a guy like that going to have?
Yeah.
Given another winter of conditioning workouts. And so, man, I trust that when this team hits the field in September of 23, they're not going to have to. I think of what they ran through with the linebacker core last year between Danny Stutzman and Deshaun White and David Igwebu, how those guys were gassed at the end of every game. I think given that the elder statesmen, the guys that have been through it before with Schmidt are going to get another offseason to get in even better shape, you're not going to run into that issue, not only for that reason, but also because, as we've talked about, there's going to be a lot more depth all across the board, a lot more quality depth. You don't have 20 wasted scholarships right now on the back end of your bench the way that you did a year ago. All those guys got processed. Now, I did think it was interesting that Venables did express some apprehension, I guess would be the proper word, as it pertains to the depth in his linebacker core. Because I think we all look at the linebacker core, Brandon, and you see Danny Stutzman and Jaron Kanek and Dasan McCulley, your 3 projected starters, and Shane Witter, Kobe McKenzie, Kip Lewis, and then your crop of freshmen, Pachotti, Lewis Carter, Samuel Masigo. Some interesting buzz that maybe Marcus Stripling reps at linebacker too. Regardless, you have a lot of depth there, at least on paper. But what Venables said was, hey, look, we can't really afford to lose a single one of those guys. I would like to keep the linebacker room as healthy as possible because it is still pretty thin. And obviously, I defer to Venables on all matters regarding the linebacker position, but
no doubt
it was intriguing to hear that he's a little bit more cautious in terms of his depth at linebacker and just the overall talent in that room that the casual fan and even the typical media member is at this point.
Yeah, no, that did stand out. I think, I mean, and maybe that was him trying to wake up some of the backups potentially, as far as work goes, hitting their goals and their marks as far as weight and speed, maybe even hitting their marks as far as, time in the film room and getting some things down. I mean, there's a lot of reasons you could say those things. Now, I'm guesstimating here because it's really hard to sit there and look at that talent. And I get it. Outside of Stutzman and McCullough, it's a lot of unproven talent, right? Like, there's not a lot of dudes out there that have been getting a lot of reps in live game action. Kanek got some, not a lot. So I understand where it's coming from, but at the same time, it just feels like, dude, all these guys were really highly rated guys and just sought after by everybody in the country. You would assume that they would be really good at that position in deep. So I get where Venables is coming from. And like you, I kind of defer to him being the best linebacker mind in the country. I thought another guy I thought was interesting, and it kind of what goes along the lines of deferring to Venables, was Rondell Bothroyd. When I asked him, why Oklahoma? You could have followed your quarterback to Notre Dame. You had Auburn. You had several other choices that were hard after you. And you visited Auburn and Oklahoma and just decided, bam, I'm going to Oklahoma. And he said, well, it was really quite simple. Venables put you in the position to make plays, and he's a defensive genius. He goes, I watched it for 3 years when I was at Wake Forest, played against it. He goes, when we were on the sidelines, they were on the field, and watching that defense and how they use that defensive line, he goes, why would you not? He goes, I'm trying to get to the next level. And I felt like they put me in the best position and give me the best position to make it to the next level. And the word genius, and it's been given to and talked about with Venables a lot, but to hear a player transfer in and that being the reason why, because Venables is a genius. I watched him do the things that he did with the defensive line for 3 years and trust in Todd Bates. And now he did say they're still learning the trust and getting to know each other, and how much trust it actually took to make that decision, off of just a visit and just watching them at Clemson, not really having a pre-existing relationship. All those type of things were things that he had to kind of take his guard down and just put faith in the staff. And he said that was hard to do. He goes, but at the same time, he feels after being here for, several weeks that it was the best decision that he ever made. And he didn't ever see himself transferring, and he missed quite a few games last year. Of course, he played 12 games, but he had a bad ankle. So he wasn't himself. So he feels like he has a lot to prove this coming season. And he said he's at 275, 280 right now, wants to get about 285 and stay right there and be an inside outside guy like a Jalen Redmond. So we learned a lot by talking to Rondell Bothroyd about, what they want. And it's things that we had previously reported on OU Insider that we had been told that was kind of their mindset when recruiting him. But when he comes out and confirms it, that kind of lays the groundwork out of, okay, this is how the defensive line makeup's going to be next year. So having said all that, who are your 4 starters on the defensive line and why?
Oh, man. That honestly is the hardest question now for this OU team heading into 2023. I think without a doubt, the hardest question to answer right now from a personnel perspective is, what does the starting defensive line look like? And I have no idea, Brandon, because there are probably 8 to 10 guys at least that could very feasibly start. Mm-hmm. I think Isaiah Coe starts. Mm-hmm. I think Rondell Bothroyd starts. Mm-hmm. I think Ethan Downs starts and R. Mason Thomas starts.
I think you're right.
Those are my 4 right now. Mm-hmm. Expect to see a lot of PJ Adebawore, just because nobody on the edge right now for Oklahoma is as fast or can bend as well as PJ. This is the one thing that I don't know we've talked about at all with PJ, man. He is crazy flexible, and he has crazy bend for a dude of that size. When he gets into his crouch, you're like, oh my goodness, that's Spider-Man. It's like you're looking at Spider-Man. Like, there are so many reasons why that kid is a can't miss prospect, and so many reasons why he's going to be a superstar at Oklahoma. So many reasons why he was a 5-star and the number 2 edge in America after being unranked a year prior in the final 24/7 sports rankings of the 23 cycle. But you can expect to see PJ Adebawore. I think you can also expect to see Jacob Lacey on the interior.
Agreed. I think he's the most underrated out of all of them.
And I do think Trace Ford is going to have a big role too. The guy to me that is almost, and I think the term X factor makes him seem almost overly important. Like, I don't want to make it seem like he's the guy that's going to make it do or die for Oklahoma on the defensive line. But what becomes of Reggie Grimes with all this talent that Oklahoma has brought in, and with him being kind of a tweener in terms of his body type right now? He's too big to be an edge. He's not quite big to be a true interior defensive tackle guy. OU's strong on the edge. They've got depth on the interior. What happens with Reggie Grimes? And I think right now with the defensive line, you're almost having the same conversation that you are with the offensive line. And I think we have a decent idea of who's going to start on the offensive line right now for Oklahoma. Not quite as clear as a year ago, but with the offensive line, the big question is, okay, who do you sit? Who isn't playing? It's almost the same with the interior defensive line because there are only so many snaps to go around and there are so many bodies. I'm very intrigued by that position group as a whole. And I think the one thing that is an unmitigated positive amongst all of it is that you're going to have a ton of healthy competition and that whoever emerges as the starter at each of those 4 positions on the defensive line will have earned it and then some.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm with you on the 4 starters, though. This sounds really weird, but I could honestly see Downs and Bothroyd being the, if they actually went to more of a true 4-man front more often than a 3-man. Now, I don't know if that's what they have in mind this year or not. I don't know. I know they want to have a nose tackle. I know they want a 0 tech. I know they like the kind of the hybrid 4-man front and the 3-man front and all that type of stuff. I thought something really interesting was Deshaun McCullough saying that he's going to line up on the edge some. They just came out and said, he goes, I will play some edge. So that to me,
which he needs to,
right?
He's too good not to,
right? But that tells me that they're going to have they feel comfortable with the cheetah position and who's there, and obviously they have Bowen and Harrington and Pearson. Like those are guys that are rotating and getting work there through the walkthroughs and stuff during this offseason. So you would have to be in a hybrid 4-man front, kind of like they did with Benito, where you would have a true edge, a nose, a 4i5 or whatever, and then you would have the jackbacker cheetah type guy standing there off the edge to rush or drop or do whatever. That's something we didn't see a lot of last year, mainly because they didn't have a guy that they felt comfortable enough doing that. But I thought that was one of the more intriguing statements during the whole thing is like, he goes, I'm going to be a cheetah. I want to be Isaiah Simmons. I want to be Roy Williams. I want to be all those guys that have been really successful at that position under Brent Venables. He goes, but I'm going to play on the line some and rush off the edge. Okay. Well, I mean, during passing downs, I mean, would you have like a NASCAR type situation where you slide downs inside a little bit? You have Bothroyd as the other 3 tech, and then the other outside edge being R. Mason Thomas or PJ. I mean, that being that's something we didn't see last year. Like there's a lot of different things they can do with this defensive line because it's more talented, because it's more athletic, because it's just more versatile than they could in 2022. That's got to make not only the coaches, but the fans excited a little bit. Just a little bit.
I think it makes everybody excited to know that the defensive line play is going to take a step up. It almost has to take a step up, Brandon, because again, right now you have too many guys at edge and at defensive tackle for somebody not to really pop off in fall camp and separate themselves from the pack. There are too many guys in that room for somebody just to win the job in a war of attrition. Let's hit the chat.
You got to hit the Hawkins stuff
because
that's all
people have questions, and we do have to hit the Hawkins thing. We'll get to that in a second. Mongo, as usual, has dropped a question in the super chat. Appreciate you, Mongo. What has better odds of happening, Zadavian Sims to OU or Texas being back? Hello, Ricardo LeBlanc. Brandon, that I would think the answer to that question is pretty straightforward.
Zadavian Sims.
Yes. So on the Michael Hawkins deal, the casuals are freaking out on social media and on the message boards right now because for whatever reason, they think Marcus Davila's decommitment from TCU has any bearing on Michael Hawkins' recruitment. Here's the deal, folks. When Kendall Briles got to TCU as their new offensive coordinator, there was momentarily a thought that he wouldn't have to recruit Michael Hawkins there. He wouldn't have to put in any work because Marcus Davila had just committed to TCU. So there was a thought that TCU was just going to retain Davila, and that was going to be it for their quarterback class. That was going to be Briles' guy. Well, Briles touched down in Fort Worth, and the first thing he did was hit up Michael Hawkins. So at that point, clearly TCU and Davila are going separate ways at some point. TCU has been recruiting, and Kendall Briles has been recruiting as if he does not have a quarterback in the boat in the 2024 class for the last month and a half. So this was going to happen at some point. It was imminent. It was inevitable. Marcus Davila was going to decommit from TCU. It just so happened that, well, it happened on a Wednesday night right before we went on the air. Look, Davila was not going to end up in TCU's class. Briles and TCU were not banking on Davila being in the class. They were not prioritizing Davila. There were other schools coming in with offers, and he was announcing those offers, which is generally your first clue, right? When a kid's committed and he's announcing offers from another institution, that's generally how you know he's not really in the boat. He's not really locked in, because Brandon, we've discussed this before. There were plenty of Sooners in Oklahoma's last signing class. You rewind to the 2023 cycle that got big time offers after they committed. Jackson Arnold had offers from Georgia and Ohio State. PJ Adebawore had offers from Notre Dame and Ohio State after they committed. They never announced them because they were committed. They were locked in. They were 100% on board with Oklahoma. So when you see Davila announcing offers from Texas A&M and Purdue and Miami, it doesn't take a Rhodes Scholar to see, okay, he's not ending up in TCU's class. He's not going to be enrolling at TCU. And so this changes nothing. I just want to make that clear. This does not change anything. And this does not mean, and do not hear me say that beyond a shadow of a doubt, Michael Hawkins is going to be a Sooner, because TCU's in this race. Kendall Briles is in this race. We've talked about this extensively and will continue to as the decision approaches for Hawkins. But I think all of a sudden Hawkins is a heavy TCU lean because Davila decommitted. No, you haven't been paying attention.
Yeah. I mean, I've talked to some TCU people, and they've continued to be under the impression that, you know, Hawkins was silent to Arkansas at the time and Briles. So they feel pretty good about the situation. Now, I'm not saying that Hawkins isn't going to go to Oklahoma, because I don't know. And I've always kind of felt that he would, just with all the connections and everything and how this thing is all played out. It's just kind of felt like it was Oklahoma. But I think the longer this drags out, the more I start to question it. And if I'm TCU, probably the better I feel about it, to be honest, because the longer it drags out, the more Briles has a chance to sell the TCU product right down the road, mind you, from Frisco to Hawkins, and somebody that he already had a pre-existing relationship with, and that some people feel he was committed to. So I don't know. You're around it much more than me. That's just kind of how some of the things I've gathered over this situation.
Yeah. And here's the thing. There are fans that are fed up with the Hawkins situation because they feel like for whatever reason he's leveraging for a better NIL deal or whatever. But at a certain point, you just got to ask yourself, what do you want from the kid? Because if you want a quarterback that's committing to Oklahoma with 100% of his heart and soul bound to the OU football program, well, that's not Michael Hawkins, at least not right now.
Right.
It's torn. And the decision, Kendall Briles' decision to make the move to TCU threw a new variable into the equation. And I have always gotten the sense, and I think many in the industry have always gotten the sense, that Michael Hawkins favors Oklahoma. But what's prevented him from being 100% sold on Oklahoma is the relationship with Kendall Briles. And so it was only natural that a week before his commitment date, Briles takes a job at a new school, and it's right before a dead period hits. The kid's going to want to get a feel for Briles' new employer because there's nothing to lose. If he has to wait till March to commit, guess what? He's still got 9 months to recruit a class around him at his school of choice, and you don't set yourself up for regrets down the road. If you're deliberate with the process, if you take a couple visits to TCU just to feel it out and decide, you know what, this isn't the place for me, I can confidently go to Oklahoma now, then you know what? At least you gave Briles the time of day. At least you gave TCU the time of day. At least you know for a fact, not only is Oklahoma the place I want to be, TCU is not the place I want to be. And that's not, if that ends up happening, again, that's nothing against TCU. But if you're wanting a kid that is 100% confident in the decision that he makes before he commits to Oklahoma, if you don't want to have to worry about drama down the line with a kid like that, then you understand his and his family's decision to slow things down a little bit. Otherwise, you end up with a situation like you did this past cycle with Colton Vasek and Anthony Evans, right? I know that's not an apples to apples comparison, but both of those guys committed before their hearts were 100% set on Oklahoma. Their hearts may have been mostly set on Oklahoma, but as time passed, as the process unfolded continually, they began to waver. And the last thing you want is a quarterback who's going to waver. Because if your quarterback starts to waver, all hell can break loose within your recruiting class. So when Hawkins commits, he's going to be 100% sure of the decision, whether that's in favor of Oklahoma or whether that's in favor of TCU. It's understandable the way that he and his family have played this hand. I think they've gone about it the right way. I think Mike Sr. is a great quarterback dad, man. And quarterback dads can be a different breed sometimes. We've seen that everybody in the recruiting world kind of knows this, but I don't think you will find many quarterback dads who have a head as straight on their shoulders as Mike Sr. And it makes a lot of sense when you understand all that he went through as an athlete and all that he's been through as a dad, trying to set up his sons, Michael and Malik, for success at the next level. So again, he may end up at Oklahoma. He may end up at TCU. I tend to believe it's going to be Oklahoma. That's always kind of been my belief, but time will tell. He's going to visit TCU again in March. We will see what happens.
So people are wanting to know, the running back situation as far as 2024 goes. There's also, a couple of questions on, Kelvin Gilliam and how he's doing. And there's a couple of questions. Well, there's a question just now. Hawkins isn't being dramatic. He's being deliberate. Huge difference. Thank you, Captain 405. I guess let's start with the running back room in 2024. Steve Wiltfong, our national recruiting director, dropped a bomb about 5-star Jarrett Gibson looking to visit Oklahoma potentially in March. Oklahoma has yet to offer Gibson. I'll be down to see all of that very soon. I think I'll be at the IMG Pro Day here in the next few weeks, so hopefully we'll have more on him then. But this kind of goes in line with what we've always talked about with DeMarco Murray, where he's got the pick of the litter, and he's going to take 2, and whatever 2 those are, they're going to be good gets regardless, whether it's Durham, whether it's Peoples, whether it's Gage, whether it's Gibson. Trying to think of some other names off the top of my head, Parker, if you want to help me out here as far as running back goes.
Okay, so right now you're bored at running back, and here's I know Steve dropped the note about Jarrett Gibson and the OU visit. Here's what people need to understand. Jarrett Gibson has been interested in Oklahoma for a really long time.
Yeah.
Really long time. Oklahoma has never offered. And DeMarco Murray has prioritized other guys in the position. Caden Durham, James Peoples, Taylor Tatum, Xavier Robinson, the in-state kid, got an offer, although he's probably more of an H-back long-term than a running back. Stacey Gage is still technically in play. Tavani Mizell is another guy that stays in contact with DeMarco in Oklahoma. So look, DeMarco's just sitting back and letting the market come to him, man. He does not have to do any more work than is necessary because he's developed outstanding relationships with all of these guys. And it's almost like whoever wants to jump in the boat first, DeMarco can just take it all as it comes because he's got no less than 5 or 6 blue chip backs that he is in very good standing with. And so you don't, this sounds weird to say about the guy that's ranked number 1 at the running back position in the class, but you don't need to offer him / pursue him, especially if you believe that there are better fits for your offense and more talented players overall at the running back position than Jarrett Gibson. And just because he's number 1 overall does not mean DeMarco Murray thinks he's number 1 overall.
Yeah.
But let's make that clear. Javonte Barnes and Gavin Sawchuk were the 2 guys that DeMarco wanted more than anybody in the 2022 class. And those guys, I think, were like number 4, number 6 at the running back position.
I thought Sawchuk was 2. Was he not number 2?
Not by the end. At one point he was. But that's to say, look, coaches see things differently. Coaches have evaluation is subjective. Coaches' opinions may line up with those of the recruiting analysts and the folks that have say in the rankings. Their opinions may not line up. And I know that there are guys right now that have gotten offers at the position that DeMarco Murray is very, very, very high on and would take in an instant if they're ready to commit. So you offer Jarrett Gibson, you almost just muddy the waters even more. And so I wonder if that's an avenue DeMarco Murray pursues or if he stays after Caden Durham and James Peoples in particular before trying to hedge any bets at running back in the 24 class.
Yeah. Well, it does feel like Durham and Peoples are going to be kind of his top 2 guys. And again, he's continued to push hard on those guys and they've continued to reciprocate, the love back to Oklahoma, being that Caden Durham is originally from Moore, Oklahoma, has a lot of connections to the area, to the university, all that type of stuff. So as much as, people want to go after the Jarrett Gibsons of the world, the Stacey Gages of the world, what have you, I like the way DeMarco Murray goes about it. Like you said, like he just kind of lets the market come to him, and he's always done that. And maybe that isn't comfortable to fans in a sense, because they look at 2021, they're like, yo, well, he did that with Kamar Wheaton and he didn't get anybody. Y'all remember who he ended up getting in the 2021 class? It wasn't a high school guy. Do you remember, Parker?
Eric Gray.
Yeah, not bad, right? Let the market come to you. It eventually works out when your name's DeMarco Murray because you are DeMarco Murray. You have a lot of things to sell, and people believe in you because you know what you're doing, and you've already proven it by the development that you've done with Gray, obviously with Stevenson, Ramondre Stevenson, so on and so forth. So there's a lot to like if you're Oklahoma and DeMarco Murray right now in the running back room, and as far as running back recruitment goes. People are asking again, and
I do want to add that somebody in the chat used the example of PJ Adebawore, which is a great example, right? Because it was very controversial on the message boards circa January of last year when OU paid a visit to Sean Davian Bradley, who at the time was a 5-star, decided not to reoffer him, and instead went after another edge player from up the road at North Kansas City, some 3-star kid named PJ Adebawore. You just got to trust that the guys that get paid a lot of money to do this stuff know what they're doing at a certain point. And trust me, I don't think anybody, and I say this with the understanding that Oklahoma has a lot of very good assistant coaches on staff, but I don't think anybody knows firsthand what it takes to play their position at an elite level quite like DeMarco Murray does.
I think another prime example is a guy by the name of Jackson Arnold. Why weren't you taking Jaden Rashada? Jaden Rashada was ranked higher, much higher at the time, and was considered one of those guys. And I remember calling and talking to 24/7. I was like, okay, what is the deal? Why is Jackson so much further down than everybody else? And they said, whoa, hold on. He's going to move up. But do you really believe that there's 5 first-round quarterbacks in this class? Well, now by the end of the season, and after everybody evaluated the 7-on-7 and the Elite 11 and their senior seasons and all the camps and all the Under Armour and the All-American game in San Antonio, come to find out, yeah, there are going to be 5 first rounders most likely that pop out of this class, and maybe more. It could be one of the all-time great classes as far as recruiting goes, and just what they do in college and where they get drafted, so on and so forth. But Jackson Arnold just skyrocketed and ended up overtaking Rashada when Oklahoma it was first come, first serve, and Rashada was about to pick Oklahoma. And Parker, you know a lot about that.
Yes, he was.
And that just kind of boom. And Jackson stuck with it. And he ended up being arguably the best quarterback in the 2023 class. So again, as Parker said, trust the guys getting paid the big bucks for all this type of stuff. People have questions about Sammy Brown. They have questions about, some of the 2024 defensive recruiting. I guess I can talk about Sammy Brown after you're done, kind of break down some of the 24 recruiting defensively, and I'll follow up with Sammy Brown and my thoughts on 24 defense.
So we're just talking defense in general here?
General recruiting, just name guys, blah, 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 blah.
Oh, okay. What's up?
Well, it is very hard to do off the top.
Yeah, no, it is. But I tell you what, I dropped a note on him last week, but 2 guys that we haven't talked a whole heck of a lot about. It doesn't seem like anybody's talking a whole heck of a lot about him, but 2 guys that Oklahoma is in real good shape for are the Lumen brothers out of Miami, Norland, Ty Cool and Ty Clean. Yeah, those are their names. They're going to visit Oklahoma on March 4th. They're both going to be there for OU's next big junior day. And so what I was told last week in speaking with a source that is very, very close to their recruitment is that A, they are absolutely playing together, and B, they're probably committing pretty soon, like as soon as the end of March. So they've been to Oklahoma before. Oklahoma's doing battle with, Miami, Rutgers, Louisville, and Auburn. Yes, those are the 5. OU, Miami, Rutgers, Louisville, Auburn. You look over that offer list, or that top 5, Oklahoma is probably the most prestigious option available. And not only that, but Oklahoma has had some pretty dang good success both recruiting and developing edge rushers from the Sunshine State in recent years when you consider the likes of Nick Benito and R. Mason Thomas. So there's a good chance the Lumen brothers end up in this class. And I wouldn't go so far as to put in a crystal ball yet, but just throwing that out there, throwing some chum to the sharks, as it were. Keep an eye on that. Elsewhere on the board, defensive line, we're going to talk about that till the cows come home in this cycle between David Stone, Nigel Smith, Zadavian Sims, Williams, and Winery. The Sooners got options, and some very good options. That Edric Houston, another 5-star defensive lineman, a guy that's visiting on March 4th. So Todd Bates and Miguel Chavis casting a wide net, trending very nicely with some of the top prospects in the entire country with those positions. Michael Patterson McDonald, David Stone's best friend, assuming his offer is committable regardless of where Stone ends up. I think it's foregone conclusion that Michael Patterson McDonald ends up in OU's class. That's the only offer he's ever wanted. So he's going to enjoy the process, which understandably so. He's got more offers than just Oklahoma, but I think at the end of it all, he's going to be a Sooner. Safety is a position where Brandon Hall has done a really, really, really good job to this point on Oklahoma's staff, not just in the 23 class, but in the 24 class as well, even though it's early. He's built a ton of great relationships with a ton of elite prospects at that position. I think Aaron Flowers ends up at Oklahoma. I've got a crystal ball in for him. I'm getting pretty close. Like, yeah, it's early. Yeah, he hasn't visited, but I'm verging on crystal ball territory with Isaiah Thomas. Isaiah Thomas really likes Oklahoma. And not only does he really like Oklahoma, but he really likes Brent Venables. And he really likes that Brent Venables is selling him on a future as the next Isaiah Simmons, because Isaiah Simmons just so happens to be Isaiah Thomas's favorite player. So another guy that's visiting on the 4th, another guy to watch closely. And beyond that, Michael Boganowski, Peyton Pierce, two guys that are linebackers, according to 24/7 Sports. Boganowski's being recruited more so as a safety at Oklahoma. Brandon Hall's his main point of contact. I would say OU leads there right now. Not by much, but they lead. And then Pierce, as we know, that battle's going to come down to Oklahoma and Notre Dame. So I think those are the big names to know on the board. Eli Bowen, I don't even feel like we need to go there because there's not that much analysis to add. I'll be shocked if he's not in Oklahoma's class. So there you go.
Yeah, I'll go with, before I get to obviously Sammy Brown, I'll go with Ty Anthony Smith out of Jasper, Texas. Look, he's visited Oklahoma. He really, really likes Oklahoma, likes Brent Venables. I wouldn't be shocked to see him back in Norman at some point in March for his spring practice. And I wouldn't be shocked to see him back for another visit for the spring game. I mean, he's that wrapped up with Oklahoma at this point. As far as Sammy Brown goes, I'm going to be in Georgia. You know, I'll be seeing Edric Houston, and Houston and I talk quite a bit. He's always liked Oklahoma. He really likes Coach Chavis and Coach Venables a lot. They have built a very strong relationship with a lot of those guys out there in Georgia. Obviously, that's a place where, you know, Oklahoma is, just because of the staff relationship with a lot of those guys, because they came from Clemson. So there's going to be a lot of, you know, comfortability as far as recruiting the Georgia, Florida, Tampa area. And again, you know, when you're talking about a program like Buford, you know, they've got quite a bit of talent on that team, and several guys that Oklahoma's already offered. So I noticed you didn't talk about Williams Nwaneri. So I'll just kind of lightly bring him up, Parker, before I go into Sammy Brown. He's going to visit on the 4th. I think everybody knows that. And Parker's talked about it a ton, about where Oklahoma stands there. And, you know, neither one of us are going to say, oh, you know, he's going to choose Oklahoma, but we like Oklahoma's chances more than a lot of others at this point, outside of maybe Missouri and Oregon. I think those are the programs. Parker, you agree with that? That have been
I would agree.
Go ahead.
Tennessee is the one that intrigues me. And keep in mind there, Josh Heupel is a former teammate of Jamar Mosey. So
true.
There are relationships there. It doesn't feel like Nwaneri is quite as high on Tennessee right now as he is on OU, Oregon, and Mizzou. Those are kind of the three that comprise the peloton, but I am keeping tabs on Tennessee because I think they could make a run.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as far as Sammy Brown goes, like, again, I'm going to be out there. I'm going to talk to him. I'm going to get to see everything about him and learn a little bit more about him as a player and as a person. I've talked to him before. He's a great kid, but it seems like it's Clemson, Georgia, Oklahoma at this point. Like, those are the three teams that really seem to be battling, and two of them are right around his area, within an hour and a half of his school in Jefferson, Georgia right now. And then you have Oklahoma, who's distant. But Venables knows the staff, knows the family, has been recruiting Sammy Brown for a long time. So there's a chance. Yeah, I wouldn't hold my breath I'm an Oklahoma fan, but I would sit there and say it's a chance. Same with Edric Houston. Edric Houston really likes Oklahoma. He's been to Oklahoma already for an unofficial visit in a game. He's coming back again. Obviously, I think Nigel Smith's another name. He's obviously not going to be back in Norman for March 4th, but he's visited Oklahoma so much. Oklahoma's in a really good spot there. A lot of people feel they lead. Aiden Breland's supposed to be back at Oklahoma again, the 4-star modern day defensive lineman, potentially for the March 4th. I'm going to see if I can get that reconfirmed, because originally he said, yeah, that's when I'm going to come out. So we'll see about that. He had to reschedule from the the January 29th junior day, and then moved, to this March 4th. People ask about T.A. Cunningham. I wouldn't hold my breath on him. I haven't heard a lot about him since he moved out to California. It's been really hard to kind of get a gauge for him as far as where Oklahoma stands. Jashawn Ross is an edge guy that Oklahoma feels fairly good about, out of Liberty, Missouri, Liberty North High School. Parker knows a lot about him, has talked about him. Logan Thomas out of Paytow, Katy Paytow, yes, same Katy Paytow that, DJ Hicks is from, and his dad's a head coach. And DJ's dad really talked up Oklahoma to Logan Thomas and his family, and they utterly enjoyed the visit and plan on returning at some point this spring. So Oklahoma, and then TJ Lindsey out of Bryan, Arkansas, he's coming in on the 4th. He's another guy that Oklahoma offered soon after he was one of the top players at the National Combine down there in January in San Antonio, and has really skyrocketed up a lot of people's boards. And he's really grown to like Oklahoma quite a bit. As far as the defensive backfield goes, obviously Parker talked about Aaron Flowers and where things stand with him. I agree there. I think Oklahoma will be the pick at some point. Kobe Black, that's another player that Oklahoma's pushing hard for. He should be taking a visit at some point. Marcellus Williams out of St. John Bosco will be in Norman on March 4th, 4-star defensive back. Oklahoma's trying to get some California flavor in there quite a bit. And then, Eli Bowen talked about. People have asked about KJ Bolden from Buford. Now, I'm going to ask him, obviously, this weekend when I come to go out to see him, if he's got plans for Oklahoma on March 4th. I don't know quite yet, but he's visited Oklahoma twice unofficially. I won't be shocked if he takes another visit to Oklahoma. Look, Jay Valai has put in a lot of work there. Brandon Hall has helped quite a bit. Venables helped quite a bit, but he's not somebody I really have a good feel for and feel comfortable about him leaving that area. It just seems like Georgia's there, Alabama's there, Clemson's there.
Mm-hmm.
Going to be hard to pull him out of that region. That's just my opinion. People have asked in the chat about Jordan Johnson-Rubel. I think Oklahoma's in a really good spot there. He hit me up the other day. I'm going to go check him out again at the IMG Combine when that opens up later on in a few weeks. So I'll have more on him, but Oklahoma's in a good spot there.
They are in a good spot, but I think Texas leads right now.
That doesn't shock me at all. Yeah. It doesn't shock me at all. So I think that's kind of where things, stand tentatively as far as defense goes. We didn't talk about David Stone because we talked about that ad nauseum. We like Oklahoma there. I know Michigan State is the other player, and he's going to take some other visits to A&M and a couple other places this spring. But he will be back at Oklahoma as well. And then he's going to spend a lot of time at OU. And he said it. I basically live on OU's campus during the summer because I stay with my sister. So I'm always there when I have a chance and when I'm able to do it within the rules. So he's been to Oklahoma far more than he's been anywhere else. He doesn't post about it when he goes. He may do a Snapchat here or there, but he's there more often than not and has a great relationship with Coach Bates. So at the end of the day, we feel like Oklahoma's defensive line recruitment, as long as they continue to move in a positive direction this season and win, 8, 9, 10 games, they should be able to bump up and get a really good defensive class. And this class maybe, may not rank as high as the 2023 class, but I think defensively across the board, it may be one of the better ones that we've seen potentially Oklahoma have in a long time.
All right. Well, we just hit an hour on this live stream. So I guess that's a good place to tie a bow on everything.
Yeah. All right. If you're not a member of OU Insider, it's 70% or 30% off right now. $75 gets you a whole year, or you can do $1 for the first month, $9.95 afterwards. If you do the annual for $75, you get all of OU Insider, you get all of 24/7 Sports, and you get all of our updates on recruiting and all that type of stuff. So it's worth it. You can go check out everybody else across 24/7 Sports Network. It's part of your package as far as that goes, and it's worth the price of admission, I promise. If you're not a member or subscriber of this YouTube, subscribe. We're going to have way more media content coming over the next few months because spring ball is kicking off, which means we're going to have a lot to talk about. And you need to be on there. And that goes for an OU Insider subscription too. You're going to want to be on there for the subscription because we've got a ton coming over the next few months on OU Insider. If you want to give us a try, it's, $1 for the first month, $9.95 afterwards if you want to go month to month. So it's worth it. All right. But anyways, that's going to do it for this version of the OU Insider Under the Visor YouTube Live. For Parker Thune, my name is Brandon Drumm, Spencer Forsythe on the board. We will see you guys later.